Um, it's always a challenge to talk about human rights and technology. And I don't want to sound repetitive. I know we have that comment before, like it's always repetitive, but please, I have to excuse myself because it's extremely difficult not to be repetitive. I know that for this global classroom, the intention is to focus on specific themes like sovereignty, democracy, labor, and education. And I think this is an excellent approach, but that's not what I'm going to do. I will have followed also the pattern of freedom of expression because I did my PhD on that specific topic. But at the same time, I say, like, everybody's talking about surveillance, freedom of expression, limitations, privacy, and so on and so forth. So I decided to focus on the impacts of technology on social, economic, and cultural rights. These rights were a little bit talked about in the previous panel. The ILO representative expressed many things, so please bear with me. I don't want to sound too repetitive, but I will kind of do it somehow. So before starting, I would like to know some things about you. I want you to be more like a critical thinker, so I need to understand you a little bit more. So I'm assuming that the majority of you are worried about your health, because we all should be worried about our health. So I will do some questions about that, and I want to know if you have used any of these devices, a Fitbit, a Garmin, or a Polar. Please raise your hands if you have done. Okay, 1, 2, 3, okay, some. Not that many, I was expecting a little bit more, but that's okay. Okay, so some of you use these technologies. Also, I assuming that on a daily basis. I guess you are tracking many of those things. And I will use this technology to talk about the main challenges that we are facing to guarantee the protection of human rights in general. So I will start, obviously, with the device. Those watches are related to the Internet of Things, and I hope you all know about the Internet of Things and how they are related to the Internet and artificial intelligence. And besides being connected to the Internet and your social media, they measure your heartbeat, calories, step takings during the day. They keep a record of your age, workouts, and so on and so forth. But of course, those of you who use it knows all of that. So let's enter into the human rights parts. And the first question will be, like, who are the developers? Seems like a easy answer. We already know that it's Fitbit, Garmin, and Polar. Those are the main companies. All of them are private companies located in the global north. Fitbit and Garmin are in the United States, and Polar in Finland. But what happens if we switch the focus to those actually doing the device? The answer immediately has to change. Because I have limited time for this presentation, I will use only Fitbit as the main technology to discuss here. And the information that I will show you now is based on what they already have in their website. And because I don't have the whole morning to talk either, I will just focus on some specific things about this specific device. So first, let's talk about the software. As any other company, they have different labs and different offices in their headquarters. So who are the workers of Fitbit? Professional young men. We can see here many of the challenges for the protection of the human rights. The first and most obvious one is gender discrimination. Fitbit has only 2 women out of 13 directors listed in the website. The ones that you see in the top, James Park and Eric Friedman, are the creators of this technology. They are the ones, and they only, like when you go to the website and you have the capture of the screen, then you see these 6 faces and only 1 woman, but then they have another one very in the bottom of the website. So they have 2. And that refers a lot to what the ILO representative was saying about gender inequality in work and within the tech companies. But this data comes from Women Who Tech, and it shows the situation in the United States. And the numbers reflects very well the situation we saw with Fitbit and what we already discussed before. But if you look at the data in other countries, the situation doesn't vary much. Women are a minority in the tech war, so the first right that we can say is violated is the right to not being discriminated. So we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that includes it as a human right, Article 1 and 2, but I don't want to limit this conversation only to discrimination, because for this to happen, we need to evaluate what is going on with our education system, as was obviously discussed previously. So everyone has a right to education, as stated in Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And education shall be directed for the full development of the human personality and to strengthen of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. Gender discrimination obviously is part of this and is affected by the way we have the whole system. This is also for women from Womanhood Tech, and is obviously about the US. I'm pretty sure the situation in your countries might be quite different, but I think it's interesting that they have this as a fact. Between 18 and 20% of all engineering students are women, so that shows a lot of our education system. It's not only about going to the faculty, to the university, it's also all the steps that women need to take to go to universities. Then we have, this is a major achievement, 31% of undergraduates at the University of Virginia's engineering school that are women. And we were actually commenting on this, that women now hold more bachelor's and graduate degrees than men. I study law in Venezuela, and my class was mainly made out of women. And then when we see the rates of tribunals and judges and the main high positions are for men. So this replicates in other areas, but I will keep it just in the technology side. So let's move on. If you have any data or anything that can show us how it is in your country, or you have a question related to that for the Q&A, I would love to hear the stats of your country. So coming back to the developers, I think it's important to talk about the right to work. We already had a little bit of that, but I add the right to the presentation, because one of the main components is the salary. Article 6 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights indicates that everyone should be able to gain enough to live. Sorry. However, on this point, we can see a major difference between software developers and other workers. Some salaries calculators in the US indicate that, in average, technology developers in California earn around $105,000 per year. That's quite a lot of money. However, the differences between women and men is notorious. According to the company Hire, that is a graphic that we have here, the difference goes between 5 and 11%, and that's without considering race, age, location. So when we see it from the intersectional perspective, the numbers are completely different. So as you know, the fourth industrial revolution that we have been discussing a lot here is focused on the use of digital technologies, and scholars like Joshai Benkler, that I hope you know, and Manuel Castells, have discussed the idea that the production of wealth is related to management of information. So only from the perspective of the software development, we can see that there are several challenges for the protection of women's rights and for the protection of the right to work. But let's turn now to other producers of this Fitbit, because that was the whole point of using the Fitbit. So the people who are in the manufacturing process, those are completely different from the pictures that we saw before. So to make the device, we need them. But when we go to the Fitbit website, we cannot find any information about the manufacturing process. And that's why I added the huge question mark, because it's just not there. So this can be strictly directed to the right to freedom of expression, because Article 19 indicates that we have the right to seek, receive, and impart information of all types. And as we know already, there are many things going on in terms of surveillance and privacy and what we can get from the news and protection of journalists, but this is not all. Like, we need to know what is going on in these very little things that have an impact on the whole production chain. But I'm not going to talk about freedom of expression right now. I will retake it a little bit later. Because there are other sources, at least with the Fitbit, that indicate that they are either manufactured in China or Singapore. So we don't really know who has the right reason here. So because I don't have real data about that, I won't focus on that. But I will do focus on a specific thing that we need in the Fitbit, that is the battery. Some models use the V3, that looks like the one in the picture, and those have cobalt. I'm pretty sure you have heard about that, but if for those who are not familiar about cobalt, it looks like this little stone and is an essential element for the production of the batteries and spare parts of many of our digital devices. And most of it comes from Africa, especially from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So this Central African country produces and refines approximately 400 tons of cobalt per year. But this country is also immersed in a conflict which is one of the less developed countries in the world. So what does that mean for human rights? That we have more than 35,000 children working on terrible conditions to extract it. Research has shown that those kids are obviously not going to the school. Then they have a direct problem with the right to education. But also, for the full day of work on those conditions, they make around 60 cents US dollar, which obviously affects their exercise to the right to work, and creates huge differences between those located in the global north and those in the global south. So one of the most urgent issues are related to the right to health, too. Those children are affected by the toxicity of this mineral. They inhale it every day, and they are in constant contact with it. So they develop breathing problems and other physical problems like deafness or heart insufficiencies. So what does that mean for the protection of the right to health of those workers? Who should ensure that they are as healthy as the software developers that we previously saw? So the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights indicates that states are obliged to promote and guarantee the existence of safe and healthy conditions. And those conditions must be continuously improved to protect the right to health. But in extreme cases like the DRC, what can we do? Like, we know that is a failed state that is in conflict, so it seems like there is nothing else. And this is a thing that we always discuss at UPs, is like, oh, nothing, like there's nothing else that we can do. But I think we need to continue demanding from state to stop this situation and look at the companies that they are doing this. And that's why I started also with the Fitbit. In 2011, the UN Special Representative on Business and Human Rights endorsed the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, and specifically to focus on the corporate responsibility to respect, protect, and guarantee human rights. So these guidelines are for states and companies to prevent, mitigate, and repair damages caused during the business operation. They are not mandatory for stakeholders, and this is one of the main problems of the guidelines in general. They only establish some principles, but they propose very interesting ideas that if companies will follow them, I think we can see major improvement in the protection of human rights. So these principles indicate different things. One of them is that the responsibility to respect human rights requires that business enterprises avoid causing or contributing to adverse human rights impacts through their own activities. So that's more into the things that they do on their daily basis. And then they seek to prevent or mitigate adverse human rights impacts that are directly linked to their operations, products, or services by their business relationships, even if they have not contributed to those business impacts. So it goes beyond the idea of what they are doing in the headquarters. It also looks for what is going on in the RC when they are extracting the cobalt. It's trying to change the perspective of the company to look at those other producers, to look at those other workers that are suffering the conditions of extracting these minerals or any other, depending on the business. Okay. I think, and when I was doing this presentation, it's very ironic how the companies that do these products that we use for our health are involved in all of these issues. And sometimes people say like, oh, I shouldn't do or shouldn't use those, and I don't want you to think that I'm against the companies or any like that, because I think they are necessary. It's part of the things that we are doing. And I think that we should look at them even more. Like, we should be more responsible towards the companies that are producing it. I think they can have the power to actually change living conditions in the global south, and not only in the global north. Because research have demonstrated that improving living conditions of the workers have a direct impact in their production. And at the end, that's development. And we had Lidia Brito yesterday from the UNESCO Regional Office, that she was talking about the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And at the end, if we have better working conditions, better salaries, better everything at the end, we can ensure sustainable development. But I want to go back to the right to health. Because I want to talk about the type of information that the Fitbit is collecting, to mix it a little bit with the idea of the right to freedom of expression. So if you use a Fitbit, your vital signs are constantly monitored, you already know this, and you are producing an incredibly big amount of data that provides very important info for the company. So the information that you provide in their website says that they collect information that includes your name, email address, password, date of birth, gender, height, weight. In some cases, your mobile telephone number, logs for food, weight, sleep, water, or female health tracking, alarms, messages on discussion boards or to your friends on the device, on the services, and payment information. So that's things that you say, yes, I can give you all this information. For the information you produce includes number of steps you take, your distance travel, calories burned, weight, heart rate, sleep stages, active minutes, GPS signals, device sensors, Wi-Fi access point, cell towers, IDs, your interaction with the services, and other devices you might use. So it's almost everything. And finally, because this is not enough for them, they also collect information from third parties that are related to Facebook, Google, Instagram, whatever other application you use. But to understand the type of information that those third parties are sharing, we need to look at the privacy setting of each of them. So I let you to do that. But in all of these cases, you agree to share this information. And this is with the Fitbit, but it repeats with other technologies. So we need to know what they do about this information. How did they use it? We know that Facebook is using that for marketing purposes. They are constantly selling ads, and we have Cambridge Analytica. It's not only for selling you a Fitbit, it's also about selling you a political perspective or any other thing. But what about Fitbit? That seems to be like a very innocent technology. They indicate that they use information to provide and maintain the services, like the dashboard tracking or to help you to connect with other people. So it's a little bit like a social media style. They also use your information to improve, personalize, and develop the services. And this is coming from their website. They say specifically that the information like your height, weight, gender, and age allows them to improve the accuracy of your daily exercise and activity statistics, like the number of calories you burn at the distance you travel. that's good. Like, that's the purpose of having the Fitbit. You measure all this stuff. But then, based on the sleep data, they may make inferences about your sleeping patterns and provide you with customized insight to help you improve your sleep. Sounds very innocent too, like who doesn't want to sleep better? And they might also personalize exercise and activity goals for you based on the goals you previously set and your historical exercise of activity data. So if you previously said in your settings that you wanted to walk, I don't know, 10,000 steps, and then you diminish it because maybe you had an injury, they will try to put something in the middle to keep you fit somehow. And finally, they also say that they use your information to communicate with you and promote safety and security. So I want to ask you now, how do you know who accesses all of that information? Like, do you, like the ones who use Fitbit, like now you know that they are gathering that, but do you know who else have that information? No? Okay. Does your family knows that information? Your doctor? Apple? IBM? Insurance companies? Pharmacies? There is a whole range of companies that are looking for that data. And I want to complicate things a little bit further, because this is what we can do here. Access to information is a fundamental right, not only for freedom of expression, but also for the right to health. And that's why big data is so popular. This allows us to exercise our right to freedom of expression and help us to exercise our right to health. And everything seems to be very innocent when we see it in individual terms. So when I just provide my data, it doesn't matter. But when we combine data, then things are completely different, because it's not the same to have my data, your data, and everybody's data into these huge companies. And the representative from ILO mentioned IBM using Watson. I don't know if you have heard anything about Watson, but it's a very interesting artificial intelligence device. This is from their website too. If you haven't checked this technology, please go to YouTube and see a video that's usually 5 or 10 minutes explaining how whole Watson works. But this in the little part says that it enables professionals to share health data and deliver insight to further care through hospitals, providers, insurance, researchers, and patients. And they do it by keeping daily information from the healthcare industry, including academic publications and new medical development. So basically, they add all the information that is produced related to health information in general. Can be the sleeping patterns, can be pharmacy, can be new research published. They add it into this computer, and that's why they have 90% accuracy on detecting cancer, because they can measure everything. It's just an algorithm they run, and it's very helpful for health in general. But what does that mean for the exercise of the right to privacy and freedom of expression? Privacy in the digital era, I think, is an illusion. I'm sorry to tell you this if you think that you have a privacy right now, but I don't think so. Every time that you upload anything on the internet, it's just there. It stays there. It's traceable. Even if you say, like, I will only share this type of information in Facebook, or I will only share this type of information with Fitbit, because then they have relationships and they can mix data. And the data that are gathering all the time is about where are you connected, where are you located, what type of things do you like, what type of things your friends like, and then they can do all this profiling. So the idea of privacy right now, I think, is just gone. But we can try to control who have access to it, like in the case of Fitbit. We can say, like, okay, maybe you can gather sleeping patterns for this period, for this purpose, but you don't share it with others. So this is a thing that we should be asking for the developers, like how can I opt in or out? What type of information can I give or should I don't give? But one of the main problems that I can see coming, and I think this is one of the main challenges, is that they are using the information we're giving to them to sell those products. And that's a thing that they are doing right now. They are giving our information to companies. But what if they start giving this information to the state? What if they start giving this information to employers? What if they start sharing this information with people that potentially can help us to gain other things in the future? So we saw that the Fitbit, for example, is collecting data on sleeping patterns. If I have a problem sleeping, that might cause depression or something related to mental health later on. And an employer might say, like, I don't want that type of employee. It will cause me problems. It will cost me a lot of money to have that person in my company, so I'd rather don't hire that. So it's not only affecting my right to privacy, but might have an impact too on the type of work that I can do later on. So one of the things about technology in general is that everything is interrelated, and that's exactly one of the characteristics of human rights. They are interdependent, and one simple technology can impact many rights. So we have heard this before. Technology is not good and bad. We are the ones using it, and we can use it for good or bad purposes. So what should we do? I think we should worry a lot and act. It's not only about worry. Oh, sorry. So what does this mean for you? And I think this is one of the most important parts when we consider human rights and technology. It's not only about getting answers, but making the good questions and trying to understand what technology is for you specifically. So people say that millennials, which I think the majority of you are here, are interested in jobs that have a purpose. So I hope that after this presentation, you start acting on these issues. And if you are an entrepreneur, for example, how are you going to promote human rights within your startup or your company? If you are an academic, are you going to leave human rights besides? Are you going to focus over that? If you're working with an NGO, are you going to promote change from a comprehensive perspective? Are you going to consider all these technological developments? Or if you are working for the government, how are you going to ensure that human rights are fully protected within this panorama? So I will stop talking now and let you think. So thank you.